In the Viking Age, the fearsome reputation of Norse warriors echoed across Europe. Among these fierce fighters, a particularly feared group stood out: Berserkers. These warriors, known for their extraordinary rage, violence, and seeming immunity to pain, became legendary for their almost supernatural prowess in battle. According to both historical accounts and Norse sagas, Berserkers would charge into combat without armor, sometimes clad in only animal skins, and attack their enemies with unparalleled ferocity. Their name itself, Berserker, is believed to derive from bear, and surker, shirt, referring to the bearskin garb they sometimes wore. However, the source of their wild strength and fury has puzzled historians and scientists for centuries. One of the most intriguing theories behind the Berserkers' ferocity points to the use of hallucinogenic mushrooms, particularly Amanita muscaria, also known as fly agaric. These bright red-capped mushrooms with white spots, often associated with folklore and fairy tales, grow in the forests of northern Europe, including Scandinavia. Historically, Amanita muscaria was known for its psychoactive properties, and some scholars suggest that these mushrooms were used by berserkers to induce the trance-like states that made them so terrifying in battle. Before diving into the theory of mushroom use, it's important to understand the role berserkers played in Viking society. These warriors weren't just ordinary soldiers. They were considered elite, feared, and often revered. Berserkers were believed to have a special connection with Odin, the Norse god of war and death, and some accounts suggest that they were initiated into a warrior cult dedicated to him. Their frenzied behavior in battle, as described in sagas, often included howling like animals, biting their shields in fury, and charging into enemy lines with little concern for their own lives. The idea of going berserk was not just a metaphor for wild behavior, it was a literal transformation. According to Norse mythology, berserkers could channel the spirit of animals, particularly wolves and bears, during combat. This animalistic transformation made them believe they had the strength and ferocity of these wild creatures, making them almost unbeatable in battle. However, this intense state of frenzy was not something they could achieve at will, which is where the theory of hallucinogenic mushrooms comes into play. The mushroom Amanita muscaria has been used by various cultures around the world for its psychoactive effects. It contains compounds like muscimol and ibotenic acid, which can cause hallucinations, distortions of reality, and altered states of consciousness. When ingested in the right quantities, it can lead to intense physical and psychological effects, including feelings of invulnerability, heightened aggression, and a trance-like state. Exactly the kind of effects that would be advantageous to a warrior facing death in battle. The psychoactive effects of Amanita muscaria are complex. In low doses, it can create a sense of euphoria, altered perception, and excitement, while higher doses can lead to hallucinations, delirium, and even convulsions. The experience varies depending on how the mushroom is prepared. Some evidence suggests that ancient cultures, including possibly the Vikings, had knowledge of how to prepare the mushroom to minimize toxicity and enhance its hallucinogenic properties. When berserkers consumed the mushrooms, it's believed that the psychoactive compounds in Amanita muscaria could have triggered a state of heightened aggression and loss of self-control, allowing them to enter the berserker state of fury. Under the influence, the warriors might have felt an immense surge of energy and an altered sense of pain, making them more willing to charge headlong into battle, unconcerned with the injuries they sustained. Combined with the religious belief that Odin himself guided them, these mushroom-induced states could have made berserkers truly formidable on the battlefield. The use of berserkers in Viking warfare is well documented in various sagas and chronicles, many of which describe their frenzied, unstoppable nature in battle. One of the most famous accounts comes from the Ynglinga saga, which details how berserkers fought with such intensity that they seemed impervious to fire and iron. They are said to have been able to kill multiple enemies without hesitation, often entering battle in a state of blind rage. In some sagas, this battle madness is described almost as a kind of possession, where berserkers lost control of themselves entirely, becoming beasts on the battlefield. One of the more chilling descriptions comes from the Eagle's Saga, where berserkers are depicted as not only fighting with animalistic rage, but also as being completely detached from normal human emotions. After battle, they were sometimes left exhausted or even unconscious for days, as if drained by the experience. While the sagas don't explicitly mention the use of Amanita muscaria, the descriptions of the berserker state, uncontrollable rage, immunity to pain, and trance-like behavior, bear striking similarities to the effects of psychoactive substances. Some scholars have suggested that the saga's omission of mushroom use may be due to the deeply ritualistic and perhaps secretive nature of berserker practices. Despite the compelling evidence, the theory that berserkers used mushrooms in battle is still debated among historians and scientists. Some argue that the berserker state could have been induced by other means, such as intense religious rituals, fasting, and chanting, which could have triggered altered states of consciousness. Others believe that the berserkers may have suffered from psychological conditions such as rage disorders or epilepsy, which could explain their wild behavior. There's also the possibility that the berserker phenomenon was a combination of all these factors: religious fervor, psychological conditions, and possibly even substance use. The Vikings had a complex spiritual worldview, and their belief in the power of the gods, particularly Odin, could have amplified whatever physical or psychological methods they used to achieve the berserker state. The image of the berserker has become an enduring symbol of Viking culture. In modern times, the term berserk has entered the lexicon as a synonym for uncontrollable rage or frenzy, reflecting the terrifying power these warriors held over the imaginations of both their enemies and future generations. Whether or not Amanita muscaria played a role in the berserker phenomenon, the idea of Viking warriors entering a drug-induced battle frenzy remains a fascinating and eerie possibility. The combination of Norse mythology, fearsome warriors, and psychoactive mushrooms only adds to the mystique surrounding the Viking Age, a time when the line between the natural and supernatural was often blurred.